As I begin this recording, I do want to let you know a friendly reminder that if you do not wish to be in the recording, please make sure that your audio and video are disabled at all times. Anything that you put in the chat box will not show up in the recording. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and Maggie, you're welcome to begin today's program.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Thanks so much, Brooke and Panaga. Eternally grateful to you both for at least a year and a half that we've been together, putting together these monthly wellness sessions on Discover Self-Care through Ayurveda. Hello, everybody, and given the topic today, emotional freedom, I'm going to start today by saying, good afternoon, San Antonio! And the worldwide community. Thank you so much, everybody. I am thrilled to be here today. And the reason I wanted to amp up that emotional greeting was to look at the choices we have today, given the pandemic, the economic uncertainties, all of these things that we may not have control over. But what we do have control over is the way we choose to perceive what life is bringing to us, and then how we can learn our skill sets for modern 21st century lifestyle so that we can show up as our best self in body, mind, and spirit well-being. So welcome, everybody. My name is Maggie Gruskin. I am so happy to be here. I'm an Ayurvedic lifestyle wellness educator certified through the Chopra Center, as well as through the Himalayan Institute. And I am also a lifestyle medicine, health, and wellness coach. And most recently, I became a diplomate in logotherapy. All of that to say is that I love to weave ancient wisdom with modern evidence-based approaches in lifestyle, habits, and behavior, so we can become our best advocate for our own informed self-care. So with that, I'd love to share with you a presentation today. If you received the email from Brooke and the library, you should have received a handout. It's just a worksheet that you can follow along. So each month you will get a 2 to 3 page handout that you can use to follow along. If you didn't receive it, no worries. Just grab a wellness notebook. I encourage you to begin a journal on your journey to discover these new explorations of mind-body integration on what new habits and behaviors can allow us to work in the space of thrive, right? As we orient to be at our best energy in work, love, and in how we relate with others and through our own energetic presence. So let's go ahead and begin. We have a lot of amazing information to share with you. And so I invite you to just see what resonates with you. What sparks an insight, an idea of how we can show up as our best self today. And you can always watch the recordings. So if you don't want to take a bunch of notes, feel free to just relax and listen to the information and see what one idea can land on you that can help you show up as your best self today. So let's begin with our 8th session of Discover Self-Care through Ayurveda. And thank you very much, the Mayor's Fitness Council of San Antonio, for allowing us to be a program recognized to bring some benefit to the community and how we can become better fit in our bodies, minds, and in our communities. So with that, each month is a different topic around the idea of this ancient wisdom from Ayurveda. So in August, it's emotional freedom, and we invite you back in the following months to join us for the following topics as well, always on the second Wednesday of the month, 12 Central or 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, to begin with, let's do a brief review for those of you that are brand new with us. And let's go ahead and look at the chat if you want to. We'd love for you to be interactive. So pop open the chat window and just type in where you are joining us from. See if we have any of our international family and friends joining us from. If you want to type in the chat. Awesome. Elizabeth is here from San Antonio. More community members. Awesome. Hello, Meredith. We've got San Antonio. Awesome. And Virginia, originally from Japan. And our friends from Detroit. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. As always, this is a global community with a very pertinent message for how can we tap into the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda so that we can address the modern lifestyle-based diseases. So let's begin with a brief review of Ayurveda. Ayurveda is known as the science of life. It's written in the beautiful ancient language of Sanskrit, and Ayurveda means the science of life. Ayu is life, and Veda is the science or knowledge of life. And it's about a 5,000-year-old practice. It's a complete holistic healing practice utilizing the 5 senses that we have. So the 5 universal elements are thought to embody our energetic vibration, and Ayurveda focuses on the wholeness of who we are by nature, and then emphasizing the use of our ability to be present and to use our consciousness as conscious choice makers in our habits and lifestyle. And the tools we're going to use can be as simple as the 5 senses, what we smell and see and taste and touch and all of those other things. So how we get to do that is we get to practice by combining both our work on the yoga mat and in our lifestyle. So if you're familiar with yoga in those pretzely poses on the mat, Ayurveda utilizes the practices of yoga on the mat to bring together this mindfulness, to cleanse the body so that we can have a purer body with less toxins, less emotional disturbances, so we can then approach our lifestyle and choices with this more aware and conscious being, more integrated in our mind-body connection. So what should you know about Ayurveda? You don't have to be a vegetarian or even love Indian food. And you don't have to practice yoga or meditation. There are other mindfulness practices to connect the mind and body awareness. And you don't have to even learn Sanskrit. But you do need to do 3 things. You need to care about your health. You do need to want to be in harmony with nature, including who you are by nature. And you do need to have a desire to balance, bring a sense of greater dynamic stability in your daily life. So if those appeal to you, then I welcome you to jump in and let's bring together this dance of yoga on the mat as we live the yoga philosophy off the mat and bring this ancient wisdom into our daily lifestyles. So bringing awareness and our ability to respond to the demands of life as conscious choice makers. So just take a moment right now and write down, what would you like to learn from today's session? If you have any questions, write those down, and then we can share those in the chat. Now, as we continue our summary of Ayurveda, we always want to remind ourselves that as we are here in the skin encapsulated spirit, we all have these 5 elements in common, which in Ayurveda represent the beginning foundations of nature. So all of nature, whether it's the stellar stars or the inner parts of our cells and organs and tissues, they comprise of these 5 elements: the space, the air, the fire, the water, and the earth. And when you combine these elements, they create these forces, this metabolic, energetic, vibrational forces. So when you combine space and air, you get this vata, sense of movement. When you combine fire, a lot of fire and a little bit of water, you get the pitta, which is the metabolic, transformational energy. And then when you combine water and earth equally, you get kapha, which is this energy and essence of cohesion and protection. So through these simple ways of looking at the 5 elements and then the 3 correlated dosha vibrational representations of energy, we can learn to see ourselves as represented as energies vibrating and as conscious beings choosing to align with those vibrations that honor our nature and help to bring us back through nurturing what will heal us, restore us, and revitalize us, you guys. So that's the real quick shakedown overview of the doshas. And for now, you guys, type in the chat, who knows their doshas? Who would like to share what are your doshas? And if you don't know your doshas, you can take the quizzes online. Brooke will put those in the chat so you can click on them now and then take your quiz online afterwards. But go ahead and share in the chat. We've got some Vata Pittas coming in. So we've got a little bit of that air and that sun, right? And Kapha and Vata. Perfect. Pitta Kapha, right. So most people are going to be 2 Vatas, a combination of 2. It's very, very rare for someone to be all three or just one. So most of us are going to have most of that combination of the two. Perfect. Beautiful. So we've got all the doshas showing up because you know what, you guys? We have all the 5 elements in us and we have all the 3 doshas in us. But the beauty and simplicity and the power behind the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda is saying simply this, that if we recognize who we are beyond our titles or jobs or roles that we play in life, but as an energetic vibration, like a fingerprint that we have that is just us. This identifies us in airports, right? But how do we vibrate it through our presence, through our essence of who we are as energetic beings? Knowing our doshas can allow us to better understand our tendencies in life, why we react in certain ways, why we have certain inclinations to say certain things, do certain things, eat certain foods, be a certain way. It's not predictive, but it's indicative so that we can be aware of and then choose more wisely to get back to that dynamic state of well-being. All right, my friends. So again, take the quiz online later on, but let's move on. So again, I always love to pause and ask in this moment, just taking that breath and asking yourself, how am I feeling in this moment? How am I showing up in my energetic being? And if you feel so moved, please share. What are some feelings that are coming up for you right now in this moment? Are we feeling calm? We're feeling stressed? Are we feeling sleepy? Exhausted? Calm and at peace, and scattered and hopeful. So feelings are as broad as the flowers of a field and the mountainside. But until we take pause and notice them, we'll never fully experience them and be aware of how they show up in our life. And are these feelings repeat feelings? And if so, how are we playing a role in either continuing this wheel of the same thoughts that turn into emotions, which turn into action? So thank you for sharing all of those. And just noting to self, let's keep an emotional journey of how we're showing up most consistently, and then connecting that with how we choose to interpret the thoughts that we think and how we interpret what happens in life. So as we look at today, most of our talks have been based on this book, Perfect Health by Deepak Chopra, and then the workbook, which I use in my workshops, the handbook for Ayurvedic lifestyle. And so as we look at emotional freedom, we'll look at some of the main ideas through this one module on Ayurvedic lifestyle and emotional freedom. So let's go ahead and dive in with the general idea of happiness. So if you have the handout, you can write the answer to, how do you define happiness? You know, when you think about, I'm happy, what does that mean? How do you define happiness? And then as we begin to look at the definition of happiness and how it has morphed in different times in life, you know, there's an idea of hedonic adaptation that started as a process of adapting to what we have or what we get in life. So this is the idea that happiness is pursuit of obtaining things, doing things, and then we're happy. So a form of looking at happiness by what we get in life, what we're doing right now in life as our way to happiness, brings about this idea of like a treadmill, a happiness treadmill. So think about it. When you feel happy, is it because you have, you know, gotten that degree, gotten that car, gotten that special someone to be in your life? So if we want to look at a desire to be happy, how are we looking at it? You know, are we looking at it as object referral or self-referral? These are different concepts that come to us from psychology. And sort of an object referral means we're looking outward. So we're looking outside of ourselves for that thing that made us happy and we feel happy. But with this comes this tendency for hedonic adaptation, to be constantly on the treadmill and having to get that other thing, that next thing that will then trigger that sense of I'm happy. Or can we look at more of like a self-referral, something that's more like internal, intrinsic, intuitive aspect or feeling of more contentment. So self-referral is more of this internal aspect of viewing our sense of satisfaction, contentment, and a feeling of happiness. So from the self-referral, we can look at what Aristotle referred to as eudaimonia. So in the handout, eudaimonia is a concept from Aristotle, which views that happiness as not being an end state. We're not pursuing happiness directly, but it happens because of a process where we seek to fulfill or realize our full potential by adhering to living a life with virtue and integrity. Virtue and integrity. How often do we look at our values, our true aspects of what brings us contentment and a sense of wholeness and living with integrity with our true nature? So just an idea of what is happiness. What am I pursuing? And Viktor Frankl says, happiness, like success, cannot be pursued directly. It must ensue by living well, by living with integrity. So can we remember to not always be looking outward, but to know that the true happiness comes by how we show up in life through our habits, right? So as we review those, two of the researchers, Deci and Ryan, say, well-being is not so much an outcome or an end state as it is a process of fulfilling or realizing one's daimon, or this inner spirit is what they call it. It's our true nature. That is of fulfilling one's virtuous potentials and living as one was inherently intended to live. So you guys, even the Greeks, the Romans, all of these researchers now in modern positive psychology are echoing the ancient wisdom from Ayurveda, which is talking about what we are inherited, how we inherently are intended to live according to our inner state, our inner true nature. So another modern psychologist, Abraham Maslow, talked about some fundamental human needs. So you might have heard of Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. That's very, very popular on fulfilling all of our physiological needs like food, shelter, and clothing. And at that point, when we can fulfill those basic universal needs, then we get into the really fun part of life, of how we can show up as craftsmen to then choose those thoughts, feelings, emotions, and actions that most align with our nature, who we are as energetic beings. And then as we're aware of our fundamental human needs, he then adds the 4 components of attention, affection, acceptance, and appreciation. So on top of our hierarchy of needs, of meeting all of our normal needs of human beings, we each uniquely have very unique needs along these 4 fundamental human aspects. And how do we go about getting these? And do we recognize the connection of when our needs are met and when our needs are not met? So when needs are met, we can have that sense of fulfillment, right? But is it temporary, or is it more of that lasting eudaimonia? So happiness is this amazing journey, and let's have fun with it, right? So when we have our needs met, we can feel comfort and pleasure and maybe happiness, right? And notice when our needs are not met, we almost instantly go into reaction, and we may feel distress, we may feel pain, we may feel sadness. What are our tendencies? So write those down. When your needs are not met, what are your tendencies of how you react? We typically don't think about it, we just react, right? So again, this is data that we're collecting in this fine journey of life. It is not a judgment about ourselves. We are here as scientists, exploring what works for us, what needs work, and then to show up courageously and to choose wisely our best path forward. So we want to then be aware that emotions are not just these things out there. Emotions are super powerful data. They are, in fact, messengers. They are energy in motion. The energy that starts as a no thing. What is a thought? It is a no thing. And then as we begin to process it again, remember through the five senses. So emotions can come to us from all of the five senses. What we're smelling, what we're tasting, what we're hearing, what we're seeing, even what we're touching. Everything in the universe, according to Ayurveda, is energy or information in one form or another. If you can imagine the waves of the colors of the rainbow, the red is the deepest and the longest wave, right? And we have all these different spectrums of waves to show us the energy behind it. So what are the two core emotions that we typically will feel when our needs are met? As we said, it's going to be comfort, it's going to feel pleasure and happiness. And then when our needs are not met, we generally feel the other core emotion, which is discomfort, right? So we now can ask ourselves, is this fill in the blank experience, thing, person, memory? Is this blank leading me to a core emotion of comfort or discomfort? And then we have the choice to step in and take that mindfulness breath and choose whether we're going to continue that wheel of repetitive thought, emotion, and action, or if we're going to step in and become our own symphony orchestra and change the tune. Because emotions are that. They're just this representation. And then guess what? We have secondary emotions that come up. So in the field of positive psychology, there's so much work being done right now on secondary emotions, focusing on our unmet needs. When we have unmet needs, especially chronic unmet needs, we can get into this emotional state or style to chronically show up because we're responding to this sustained unmet need. So this can lead us to feel emotions such as anxiety, maybe hostility, guilt, depression. So we have to realize that when feelings are not fully experienced, just like a glass of water, if we're not fully experiencing it, we can't fully digest what we're taking in. So feelings not fully experienced can accumulate as emotional toxins. So if you can imagine the five senses as straws that are coming into our body from and connecting us to our outer body, our environment, everything we're taking in can be information and is feeding our emotional and feeling jar. So if we continually have feelings that are not being fully experienced, meaning we're not registering them or we're not processing them, like food, if we're not able to digest, you know how unsightly that can be and how painful that can be in our physical body. So in Ayurveda and yoga, we look at our subtle body. Our energetic body is where our vibrations, emotions, and thoughts swirl, and we can take them in with awareness, but most of the time we're not aware of everything in our environment or everything coming in through all those straws, right? So a lot of times feelings are not fully experienced or processed. So if we can get to that state, if we kind of feel we have this heaviness, this fullness of undigested feelings, we can begin to then create what's known as emotional ama, AMA, which in Ayurveda is this toxins, this accumulated bits of undigested stuff. So we don't want to do that. We want to learn ways to fully register the feelings and emotions, and then learn the skill sets that will allow us to process and digest and release and let go. Okay, so just like food, our emotions fuel, our feelings fuel our emotions. All right, so as we look now at our doshas, thinking of you, what are your tendencies when you feel stressed? What are your go-to? Just write them down. And then as you learn more about your doshas, are you making the connection of your tendencies when you feel stressed? And then your dosha and what the doshas say about you. So that's a much longer conversation that we have here, but I encourage you to watch some of the previous recordings earlier on in the year, and Brooke will share that link for the recordings so you can see more detail on the doshas. So that's the connection here, is noticing how we have a tendency to react and respond to stressors. And then can we be self-informed on who am I as this energetic being, and what is the tendency of those energies on responding to stress? And with that bit of knowledge, we arm ourselves. We use our clipboard of that data, not to self-judge, but to take a step back and with self-compassion and with that strength of confidence, knowing that we can learn new skill sets to deal with the onslaught of a distracted lifestyle, of too many inputs, of too much information. But let's set aside time so that we can respond and allow the emotions to fully digest in life. So let's move on really quickly through the emotions by doshas. So the vata, because remember, vata is space and air. So when a vata gets ungrounded and unruffled, it's just like air that tends to flow over and blow and not come to rest. So you might feel a lot of that anxiety, inability to decide. And so a lot of instability, like that leaf that never rests. Okay. And then the pitta is fire, right? So we may have this sort of social check of a blanket. And when we get overly heated, when we have too much stressors, particularly chronic, we burn through that. So we begin to be irritated. We blow up. We say things we normally don't. So the fire becomes all too consuming. And then the kapha, remember, is the water and the earth. So too much of it, if we get too much of that water and earth, we can feel that depression, that heaviness, like we just want to sit on the sofa and not get up again. So these are just some ideas, some very simple and super powerful ways to bring that power of self-awareness to our daily lives so we can stop the downward spiral before it gets bad and greased up with repetitive behaviors and emotions and actions. And then we can remember to attune ourselves to that which nurtures us and to tap into our heart with courage to then choose a new behavior that will bring us back a little bit more, just a little bit closer to our nature. All right, so as we respond to life, honoring that our tendencies are just that. We are not our emotions. We are not our thoughts, nor are we our reactions of how we respond to life. But remembering this information will help guide us that how we're showing up through our energetic doshas can be information. Do we typically say, what did I do wrong when something happens? Or do we typically try to blame someone? What did you do wrong? Or, it's like, I don't even want to deal with it. So recognizing in the simple way that our tendencies of how we respond to a challenge, an environmental stressor, a lot of this can go back to our doshas. So doshas become a beautiful, informative pathway to just become conscious observers of life and how we're going to become the craftsmen in our life of creating masterpiece days. All right, my friends, so that's a quick review and intro of the doshas related to emotional freedom. Now, let's move into the 7 biological responses. So, our teacher, Dr. Deepak Chopra and David Simon talk about these ideas of the 7 biological responses. So we're all very familiar with the fight and flight and freeze mode, right? But let's look at the others. There's a reactive mode. There's a restful awareness mode, an intuitive mode, a creative mode, a visionary mode, and a sacred mode. So how are we responding, and are we aware of these alternative ways of interpreting stimuli in our life, and how we can choose to move forward through a different chosen way to respond? So let's go through them, and reviewing the fight and flight response as the most primitive response, which is almost hardwired because it's based on protection. We feel that fear, we view our environment, we're always scanning our environment for potential threats. This helps us, it kept us alive. But now, with so much acute and chronic stress, it's beginning to be a source of our chronic dis-eases. So we want to look at the reactive ego response as a way to chronically be seeing if we're chronically in this fight flight psychological response. So we're either fighting, ready to run away, or we freeze. If we are, then we tend to be in a reactive mode. And this is tied to having an ego perspective of life. We see through our eyes, through our world, not understanding the larger connection to life. And sadly, research shows that most of us spend our time here, either in the first or the second biological responses. But there's hope. There are so many research going on, so many evidence-based research going on at looking at the power of neuroplasticity, how we can choose to rewire the brain so we can make new grooves in the neural pathways so that when we see a stimulus in the environment, a thought, a feeling, a situation, a person, we can then choose to create new pathways and then choose a higher level of awareness and a better way to move forward in our choices. So let's take a look at some of those. When we're, so the fight, flight, freeze responses, according to the doshas. Let's take a quick of that real quick. So the corresponding doshas, so Vata, as we mentioned, has the space and air. So when we feel that, it'll be more of the flight. You want to run away. You kind of have this quality of avoidance, anxiety, and fear. Note that down if those are your sort of tendencies. And then people with a lot of Pitta, they might trigger into a fight mode. And the tendencies or qualities that might come out are that irritability, the loss of temper, and defensiveness. So you can feel almost like the fight in the fire, right? And then the kapha, as you remember, is the earth and the water. So we tend to maybe freeze into inactivity, maybe feeling a sense of numbness, detachment, or giving up easily. So in this way, we connect our own insight of who we are as an energetic being, perhaps what our tendencies might be, and can we look for the qualities that might trigger us into remembering that we're in this state to begin with? Okay. Awesome, you guys. So we're just connecting ancient wisdom as we're looking at emotions. So now, can we begin to elevate, choose to respond in different ways to what's happening in life? So let's look at restful awareness response. In this space, can be cultivated through meditation, other mindfulness practices. We can then begin to have this feeling where the body relaxes. So can you feel your shoulder blades dropping down, your belly relaxing, your mind not racing as much? So here, the emotions take on more of a spirit-based emotion. So we're not just in the mind or the ego, we're beginning to move up in the layers of consciousness as we evolve our capacity and our desire to swim in this presence. So can we become conscious choice makers? This is the first step. In this state, we will feel that sense of a lowered heart rate, a lowered blood pressure, our breathing slows down, we perspire less, our stress hormones reduce, and all these other benefits just by practicing these mindfulness techniques. So how often do we allow ourselves to carve a few minutes to doing these types of practices. There's the intuitive response, where our awareness broadens, where we become more of an authentic expression of who we truly are by honoring to connect with the present moment and allowing ourselves to communicate more fully with intention. So again, meditation is a beautiful way to tap into the truths of who we are, and then through our voice to express that most fully, connected to our intuition. So how often do you touch base with this response, this type of response? And then there's the creative response, one we need right now to look for new solutions, new ways for us to look at the stressors in life. This is about changing perspective, recognizing that this too shall pass. So how can I become a participant in choosing a new way forward? It's about the mindset. And like Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So however we are showing up right now in our life, we are co-creators in our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So how can we elevate our thinking to then understand new solutions? So with creative responses, you can look at setting intentions, ways to awaken the creative response. We need time to let these ability to think of new ideas, right? To increase our gap of looking at all the possibilities of how we can choose to move forward. There's not just one way, there's multiple pathways. Can we incubate those ideas, give them time, bring in our insight or inspiration, and then can we implement slowly, one step at a time, until they become integrated and become a way of our repeated beingness. So how can we be creative, co-creators, and responding in a new way to life? And then how about a visionary response? If you are attuned to being a part of a collective soul, a universal aspect of identifying who we are as this energetic being, are you oriented to a larger than self vision, a transcendent aspect of who we are, what we're here to do? Tapping into collective dreams through a community or through your own passion and purpose through an archetypal aspect. Are we now fully embodied as a conscious participant every day, choosing to start our day and end our day with conscious awareness? And then lastly, the visionary response. So questions and stories, identifying who are your archetypes, who inspires you, what attributes will you embody and be so we can show up as that ideal aspect of self. And then our last one is our sacred response. Can we attune to this expanded aspect of self, a form of unity, consciousness, foundation of compassion for self? Our mindset shifts and really, really moving from me, what's in it for me, to constantly being attuned to how can I be of service? How will energy flow through me as I share my unique skills, talents, and purpose for being? So as a wave is to the ocean, each of us is to spirit. It's the general idea behind this sacred response of whatever life brings to us. Which of these responses will we attune to? Will we gravitate towards developing as our general tendency? So right now, checking in, where are you now in this aspect of alternative modes of responding to life? Just looking at all of those and noting it down. Again, it's just our tendency. It's not predictive. It's not who we are. Beautiful. Beautiful. So that is just an idea of how to show up in different biological responses and how we can ask some of these questions to evolve ourselves to higher aspects. Beautiful, creative, restful awareness, Thank you for sharing those, you guys. So now let's look at an amazing researcher, Marshall Rosenberg, and his work with nonviolent communication as a really important new skill, a new skill set we need for this distracted, crazy overflow of information life that we have. We need to remember to relate with each other, with compassion, with self-understanding, so that we can connect at the universal space that connects us all as energetic vibrations of love and peace. So with nonviolent communication, there are 5 steps. The first one is saying, when something happens, just say what happened. So become aware of that as objectively as you can. Just write it down or think about it. What happened or what is happening right now? And then note to yourself, what am I feeling? So remember, we always say, name it to tame it. If you can name the feeling, that begins the pathway towards healing. Then we can say, focus on your need. What do I need that I'm not receiving? So remembering those 2 core, right? The comfort and the discomfort. If you're not comfortable by what's happening, what is the unmet need? So recognize what is the need, the feeling and then the need. And then say, what am I asking for? As we move away from victimhood towards showing up as the authentic authors in our life, we have to learn how to stand in the foundation of our being, recognize what our true needs are, and then compassionately be able to say, what am I asking for? Identify your true need. And then, what is the gift or opportunity in the situation? So if we change that mindset from things are happening to me, we can say things are happening for me. And if I'm not having this as a win or as a great experience, then what is the learning opportunity here? What is the lesson that can be the gift or the opportunity to reframe how I'm looking at this so I can grow and continue to evolve? So conscious communication is key as a way for us to practice to be more mindful, more conscious, and better communicators through our true needs and how they connect to our ability to have that essence or feeling of emotional freedom. We're not victims. We are at the helm, driving how we are interpreting the thoughts, the feelings, and our needs, right? So let's look real quickly at 7 steps to clear the emotions. All right, so we're gonna get upset. That's life. So let's take responsibility for what we're feeling. Nobody's doing this to us. Let's say, I'm taking responsibility for what I'm feeling. And then identify the emotion, as we said, name it. Then feel the body, witness what's happening in the body. Where do you feel this emotion? Is it in your gut, in your heart, in your back, in your feet, in your mind? Witness the feeling in the body. And then express the emotion in private to yourself first. So grab a journal or a scrap of paper, which you can then, dissolve and tear up. And then release the emotion through a ritual. So this is a way for us to believe that we have the capacity to process the emotion, something that is no thing, we can put on paper, and now we have a thing. So we can release it through a ritual, whatever it is that connects us to this real feeling of release. You can burn it. You can put it in the ground if you want to plant these negative feelings that we've torn up. And now you plant it in your garden so that it can now be a part of the cycle of life to renew and allow new life to grow. And then share the emotion with someone that you trust, a good listener. They're not there to fix you. They're just there to be with you and to listen. Let them hear your voice. Let them hear your release. And then be sure and rejuvenate. Celebrate the moment of release as we create space, which holds the potential for us to now show up fully as our authentic authors in our way of writing the story, the new story. All right, my friends. So as we're coming to close the end of the hour here, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat. and then we'll review them at the end. So there's a lot of skills, ancient wisdom from yoga, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine. A lot of them use breath work for this emotional release, right? So there's different emotions and there's different states that we want to get to. We don't always want to just calm down, right? Sometimes we want to get hyped up. We have a presentation, we have a job interview, we have a romantic meeting we want to be ready for, right? So we have the ability to choose the feeling, the emotion, almost like a color that we wear. So the more you get to see yourself, ourselves, as these energetic vibrations in flux, we can then begin to attune with, oh, I need a slow belly breathing to calm down, or I need a complete breath to think evenly with my right and left side of my brains through Nadi Shodhana, right? Balancing our lunar and our solar aspects of our energetic flows of energy. Or I need Ujjayi, I need this deep, strong breathing to cleanse, powerfully cleanse the nadis, the energy channels, and to awaken more oxygen in my brain. Or Bhastrika, even more so. So there's so many different types of breath work as one way of showing how we can use simple tools of the five senses and our body to connect with how we intend to show up. No longer victims to what is happening to us, but recognizing that what is happening for us is a way for us to continue to evolve and love the journey of exploring what life is bringing to us. So, of course, another powerful way is to journal. There's so much research now that shows that just putting your pencil to paper will begin the pathway to expressing more of your truths, almost as if it's pulling the truths from your subconscious out into the liminal aspect of where we can consciously be aware of these messages, what I call the breadcrumbs from the soul. So are we listening? Are we capturing these beautiful fireflies that come from our spirit? So have you developed a vision statement for your life? Carve out a 20 to 30 minute this weekend when you have some space. And in that space, allow your mind to free flow and develop a vision statement for your life. And let's focus on your needs and your desires, because your desires right now are connecting the highest truth that your body and your mind feel it needs right now. So I always say, do not deny a desire. A true desire is just our mind and body talking to us. And when that desire is fulfilled, we can then release it and then elevate and realize that that may be part of that fleeting aspect of that happiness, the fleeting aspect of who we thought we were, and then remembering to come back to the whole aspect of self, which includes our body, our spirit, our family, our community and career and friends. The holistic aspect of life gives us infinite opportunities to continue to be creatives in our life. So what are we creating at work, in our energetic body, and in our relationships? How can we power ourselves up to show up as our best self and experience emotional freedom so we can stand on our own chariot as our body is represented by the chariot? The horses no longer being wild and going everywhere unharnessed are now at our direct command as we grab the reins by focusing on the mind-body connection through that power of that breath and the moment-to-moment mindfulness practice that we have. So imagine yourself courageously standing in your foundation of your life as we guide through our awareness of self, making space to breathe and infuse ourselves with that energy, and then consciously choosing our best way forward as we become craftsmen in life, working to build one masterpiece day at a time. So as always, we end with some tips on enlivening health. So notice when your emotions arise and just identify your needs. What are they? Review the steps of conscious communication, and this should be a part of our fluent language in relationships as a necessary skill set for our modern, distracted, crazy, information-based lifestyles. And then can we then begin to practice the 7 steps for emotional clearing? Just like we're washing dishes, let's clean out the emotions, detoxify in all the different ways that we have learned. And then can we create a regular journaling practice, including perhaps a vision statement, maybe a family vision statement if you have a family, or your work buddies. Allow yourself to breathe consciousness into your intentions, and let's get busy setting aside ways to take action. One small step at a time builds those larger momentums in our life. So that's it, you guys. I want to welcome you to join us next month as we look at Self-Care September. Again, the second Wednesday, September 8th at 12 noon Central Time. And you can visit the library's online calendar for the next registration. And I want to thank you all. I referenced a lot of these books in these talks. And if you'd like to send me a message, you can Instagram me at Lifestyles to Thrive. You can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook under my name. And as you are watching this, you can also feel free to reach out and text me. And Brooke has put those links into the chat for the dosha quizzes. So please feel free to take those online. And I hope that you have gotten a little tidbit, a spark of an insight or an inspiration. And what's that number one takeaway that will create the biggest impact in how you show up in your day today. So thanks so much, everybody. And with that, we'll go ahead and open it up to the Q&A session, and I will turn it back over to Brooke.